Welcome to Mikab Model College online tutorial. We hope at the end of this lesson, you will have acquired the expected learning outcome. Sit down and listen attentively as we introduce.
Good day again, class. Welcome to today's class. I remain Ibrahim Sansin, your biology teacher. We are here today to teach a new topic, and that is the characteristics of the kingdom fungi. In our previous class, remember, we have talked about the characteristics of kingdom Monera and the kingdom Protozoa, Protostista rather. So we saw various examples and then we showed their diagrams. So today's class is going to take us to the kingdom fungi. This particular kingdom, well, I myself, when I was a junior class like yourself, I thought mushroom was supposed to be plants because I simply see it growing on land or terrestrial habitat. However, it is later we come to know that organisms like the mushroom, organisms like yeast, and organisms like the rhizoids, they are all under a group of organisms that are called kingdom fungi, meaning they are not plants. So let's take a look at their characteristics. Those things, if any one of you has ever seen a mushroom before, you will know that it is not green. And if you also happen to see the diagram of rhizopods, it does not possess anything green that will enable them to carry out what? Photosynthesis. That means they lack chloroplast. They do not have true root, stem, or leaves that will make them to be classified as plants. So, however, they have some structures that look like that of a stem. The one that looks like that of a stem, we call it the rhizoid, and we have the hyphae as well as the stipe or the sporangiophore. So these are the parts they have instead of root, stem, or leaves. The examples we have under this class include the mushroom, the rhizopods, the yeast, mucor, and toadstools. Those organisms store food as glycogen. But if I may ask you, what group of organisms store glycogen in their cells? Is it not animals? So that means mushroom or this particular group of organisms, they are not animals. I mean, they are not plants. Their cell walls are made of chitin instead of cellulose. They also reproduce by means of what we call sporulation, and some of them reproduce by means of conjugation. Conjugation is their sexual mode of reproduction, while sporulation is their mode of asexual reproduction. These organisms do not move from one place to another, and as you see, we are discussing eukaryotic organisms that make mushrooms to be what? Eukaryotic as well. Some of them are unicellular, that is, they are single-celled, like the yeast, for example, whereas some of them are multicellular. That's example we call mushroom is an example of multicellular example or multicellular fungi. Some of them are also saprophyte, especially that fungus, that mushroom we mentioned, while others are parasitic. Those organisms too, they are also found in a moist, wet, or aquatic environment. Yes, they are found in an aquatic environment. And please take a look at the board, everybody. Yes, what do we have there? We can all recognize this organism. This is a mushroom, a typical example of fungus. So this is what we call gill, and the head there, instead of calling it leaf, we call it what? Cap. Some will even call it pilus, and this is what we call the stalk. Now that part that we said is resembling the part of root is called hyphae. If it is just one, you call it hypha, but now hyphae. So that brings us to the end of the kingdom fungi. You will want to know more, especially about the other examples we mentioned. You can always go online then to learn more. We have just used one of it, which is mushroom, to expatiate the lesson so that we'll be able to understand what their characteristic is. Now, I am introducing you to the fourth kingdom we have. Remember, we have discussed the kingdom Monera. We have discussed another kingdom called Protostista. We have just discussed the kingdom Fungi. Now we are going to the fourth kingdom, and that is kingdom Plantae. This kingdom, we actually group them into 3 phyla. The first phylum there is the phylum called Talophyta. These are the algae. The second one is the Bryophyta, which include the liverworts, the mosses, and the hornworts, and the likes. Then the third one, we call them Tracheophyta. Tracheophyta, that is the third phyla. But this Tracheophyta is actually being subgrouped or subdivided into 2 subphyla, which are Pteridophyta and Spermatophyta. Now let's take a look at this Talophyte. The Talophytes are divided into 3 classes. There are some algae that are red, some of them are green, while some are actually brown. So these ones that are red, we call them rhodophyte or rhodophyta. Then the one that we call that are green algae, we call them chlorophyta. And those ones that are brown algae, we call them phaeophyta. These organisms are also simple. They are unicellular and they are also aquatic. However, too, they are filamentous, and some of them exist at the cellular level. In fact, all of them exist at cellular level of organization. So like the example we have here, Spirogyra is actually an example of filamentous algae. Then they undergo sexual and asexual reproduction. So like the Spirogyra undergoes sexual reproduction, it can also undergo asexual reproduction, which is either by binary fission or by conjugation. Just look at some of the examples we have there. Chlamydomonas, it is an example of unicellular free-living algae. Then we have Spirogyra, an example of filamentous organism. We have the Volvox and Pandorina. These are examples of other group of algae that we have, which exist as colonial organisms. So meaning that we have a group of cells clumping together and they form an organism. So others also include Closterium and many other examples like that. Some of them, just like the ones we have mentioned, they are aquatic. So they live in a damp, shady places. So this is the structure of the diagram of what? Chlamydomonas. Good. You have a good memory, you can identify. This is a Chlamydomonas, and these are some of the organelles you have there. This is the nucleus. So inside it we have the cytoplasm, and this one is called what? The chloroplast, which it uses to carry out photosynthesis because it is an algae. Remember, we said these organisms live inside water. For movement, these organisms actually use what we call flagellum. Both of them are called flagella. It also has contractile vacuole, just like other unicellular organisms. Now take a look at this. This is what? Spirogyra. Thank you. So this Spirogyra actually is a filamentous organism. A filamentous organism. So meaning it is multicellular, but it is a filament. So you can draw the diagram and study all the other parts of the organelles later. So this is a Volvox, an example of what? Colonial multicellular talophyte. So you can also go and then study the diagrams and then the parts of the cells later. So that will bring us to the end of our class today. Please watch out. In our next class, we have just concluded the discussion of one of the 3 phyla that we have in the kingdom Plantae. The next class will help us to see the characteristics of the other 2 phyla, namely the phylum that we call Tracheophyta and the phylum that we call Bryophyta. Until then, have a wonderful day.